Welcome to Gaming with Scott presents Marvel Superheroes, a character development session. In these sessions, we meet our players, learn a bit about them, learn more about their characters, and get a glimpse at what drives them in our Marvel Superheroes live play podcasts. What makes a superhero? What drives the human condition to reach outside ourselves and perform heroic deeds? What makes a hero? Or a villain? Are these heroes fueled by thoughts of the greater good? Or are they motivated by revenge and only strive to burn a path to the ones who hurt them and their families? We hope to answer all these questions and more just after the music. Welcome to Gaming with Scott. I'm here with John.
Hi there.
And I, of course, am the aforementioned Scott. We're going to take care of sitting down and talking about John's character today. He is the character CSUR-1, and we'll get more into that in a bit. But I wanted to sit back and first get to know John a little bit, talk to you about some of your gaming experiences, what you bring to the table, and where you want to go looking forward.
Oh, well,
Although, hold on, I'll get those sort of in.
Oh, okay.
If that's okay. I know you were like, I'm ready to go. Tell me about yourself as a gamer.
I have played a lot of different games. I started at age 11 on second edition D&D the year it came out, nice. And since then I've turned into sort of a game collector. I've also run and played quite a bit of gaming, different products. Like, let's see, I was really into Torg for a while back in the day. Nice. Did a lot of GURPS.
See, I've never done GURPS.
Oh,
I've heard it's good stuff.
I think you'd like it. A lot of different, different generations of D&D until I was sick of each subsequent edition of the game in sequence.
Mm-hmm. But you never did THACO? You never did?
Oh, I did THACO.
That's
in second ed.
Oh, is it second ed?
Yeah.
I thought they got rid of it after first ed.
No, that's in second ed.
I never played second ed.
I still remember that was page 72, players handbook in second ed.
Well,
I have it all. That's taking up room in my gray matter that should be used to remember my loved one's names.
Right. Your cat mittens, no space. Page 72, THACO. Got that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right, good. I'm wondering whether we're going to have listeners that are going to go, that was like on the upper right-hand side of page 73. It wasn't really on page 72. I'm wondering if we're going to have those type of geeks, which I encourage.
Oh, yeah. If I'm wrong, call me out. 101 was the saving throw table.
Oh, okay.
Well, anyway. I also moved on to a variety of other geeky hobbies. I was a card flopper.
What is a card flopper?
Well, played Magic the Gathering.
Oh, yeah. My son just started that, like, last weekend.
Oh, it's like crack.
Yeah.
And let's see. I went on to play... there was a D20 game, a based game called Warlord, that I was actually a playtester for a while.
Nice.
They must have really liked us as people, because they never listened to a damn thing we said, but... That was fun.
Rarely do they. Well, now, do you have like a special place in your heart for Warlord because you helped play test it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And let's see, I've done several flavors of LARP.
Excellent. What have you been doing most recently, game-wise?
Game-wise, I have been sucked back into Vampire Org LARP play. I am
May I say, first of all, that if there's anything I can help with, if there's anything you need, you have my full and willing support and understanding.
Oh. Hey, that's great.
On the other side of that coin, you have my sympathies.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. We're not saying... Our apologies to all of our Vampire LARP org listeners.
They know what they're in.
Yeah. Well, yeah, right. And if you've been in one, you know one, and so you get where I'm going. I'm not bashing anyone. I think everyone's mode of gaming is fantastic. If you're gaming, it's good.
Nobody loves a particular game as much as somebody who's in it, and nobody hates it as much as somebody who's decided to throw up their hands and be done with it.
Yeah, this is true. This is absolutely positively the truth. So, why a superhero game?
Well, I've always been intrigued by the genre, in that it's the kind of thing where as a kid you imagine, like, well, if I were in that situation, I would do XYZ with these powers, whereas there are all these limitations in the actual medium based on the comic book code and the art skills of Hanna-Barbera or whatever,
Right.
that
Right.
kind of limit that expression or the budget of the movie.
Right.
Like
Green Lantern could only do 2 Green Lantern-y scenes or 3 Green Lantern-y scenes when we were all just jonesing, oh, go do this and oh, do that.
And you look at Green Lantern and it's like, really, a gun?
Yeah.
You have everything you could think of in the entire universe, and it's like, bang, a gun.
Yeah.
It's like, ugh.
Yeah, you couldn't have just a little more, maybe. Okay. Yeah, and what you're thinking of is, okay, the producers thought, oh, this will be cool. And then they, ran out of money for CGI, so they couldn't do all the things we could imagine.
Yeah.
But, like you said, the limitations of the budget of the movie. How much do you know about Marvel?
I would consider myself passingly familiar. I've read a few Marvel comics. I'm not as familiar with it as, say, Marty, who's
Right.
also playing with us.
Yep.
But
I asked him that question, and we had half an hour on the Marvel timeline. I was like, oh, okay then.
I've watched this. We're recording this in the 2010s, so I've watched the movies that have come out.
Okay, because I was going to ask, you watched the Thor and Captain America and Avengers, and
I've seen most of them. I've missed a couple here and there, but I'm more or less familiar. I'm also more or less familiar with I remember the X-Men cartoon from the 90s,
Nice.
which was pretty awesome.
where Wolverine got stuck in the wall. I thought that was cool.
Stuff like that.
Right.
And read a few comics here and there. Not all of them have really. I'm not particularly a devout follower of any one.
Do you have a favorite comic?
A favorite comic? I always liked Conan,
Nice.
Sword and Sorcery.
Nice. Okay. Right on. That's cool. Not one that everybody jumps to as their first answer. What do you see or hope to get out of this game or the game world? In other words, what do you want to take away from this?
Well, I would like to portray a character that I think it would be fun to read a comic book.
Okay.
I think that would be a fun thing to do, to get into creative uses of the powers that we randomly, ended up with. Mm-hmm. And also to explore the looking for the word for it, the kickers and the initial ideas that we came up with when we were rolling things up, the trouble that we started for ourselves. I'd like to see how that plays out.
Okay.
Stuff like that.
Okay. What do you want to see in the universe that the world takes place in?
Well, I'd like to see big cosmic battles. I'd like to see large scale adventure.
Okay.
I'm not so much interested in the street level
Okay.
kind of stuff, but I want to see big goddamn deals where save the world, stop the universe from coming unraveled, that kind of stuff.
And that is patently evident in your background, which we'll get to in a bit. And so I see where you're, because there are some people who I want to see the life in the alley behind this one bar for 6 months, 8 months at a time. And there are other folks like yourself who are like, no, I want worlds have to hang in the balance. What happens at that bar is okay, but once you've told me, I'm good. We're done. We don't have to do that day in and day out. Understandable. Fair enough. Do you want this particular saga that we're in, or this story that's going to be told, do you want a bright 4-color world where it's it's bright, it's shiny, it's happy, it's Christmas time, here's a picture of Captain America punching Hitler in the face, hooray? Or do you want it in that dark, graphic novel, Killing Joke? Those are your two ends of the pendulum. Where do you want the game to be?
Well, I see that there's a certain point, especially in Marvel in the 90s, I'd say especially, where they got into being really gritty for the sake of being gritty. Mm-hmm. And it turned into its own form of stupid.
Okay.
So
okay, I can, yes, that's a viewpoint.
There's a certain point where I don't want to get into having everybody end up addicted to whatever and have your arms fall off, or somebody gets some horrible thing happen to them all the time. That I don't want to get too much into that, but I'd like to keep it sort of grounded in a certain level of reasonable
tension.
Reasonable, yeah. High stakes, high tension. I'd rather have some addressing of real world issues. Have that be a thing. We don't have to necessarily dwell on it, but just to acknowledge that there is inequality and be sensitive to the fact that we're portraying characters that are super extraordinary. And you start, one of the questions I always wondered about was, well, okay, so if you're, I know this is a DC example, but if you're like Batman or Superman and you're going around busting criminals who are performing petty crimes, you start to wonder, it's like, well, why are these people committing crimes? When does the superhero address the fact that he should be addressing like the big injustices that are perhaps controversial to even talk about?
Or when should he sit back and say, all right, Batman's on the street protecting Gotham. Why would you resort to purse snatching, bank robbing, or other skullduggery when you know Batman is out? Like, what is so bad in your life that is forcing you to engage in this criminal activity when you know he's going to catch you?
How dumb do you have to be a petty car thief in, like, Metropolis?
Yeah. So, and at what point does, okay, and this is sort of a hot topic recently, the idea of wealth inequality. The wealthy are super wealthy, the poor are super poor. At what point do you sit back and say, gosh, my life is so bad that, yeah, I know Batman's out there, but I got to go rob something. I got to go rob a drugstore or go do something or I can't eat. At what point does the Batman then go, hey, look, there's larger contributors to the crime that we have in the streets. Should that be addressed?
Right. Why is Gotham a hellhole?
Right.
And yeah, and you get into stuff like, what happens when the hero encounters something that he can't punch?
Yeah.
Into a solution. Mm-hmm. I would very much like to see that, or come to think of it, the entire temptation of power. They say, to have the opportunity to say, well, I have this power, I can see the solution. Why don't I just, blow up Enron or something like that?
Sure.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. Take the Fortune 500, round them up, redistribute their wealth,
and end up
at gunpoint,
and end up as a villain because you're probably going to screw it up along the way.
No, maybe a little bit of that.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Excellent. Okay,
and that's a theme that I'm addressing with this character, where he's very much taken it upon himself to. He's a time traveler and has taken it upon himself to rewrite history.
Okay, so I'm going to touch base on that here in just a minute. That's one that I want to revisit that point.
Sure.
And we'll get back there. What level of personal horror do you want to see in the game?
On a scale of
like 1 to 10.
1 to 10, I'd put it at about a 4.
Okay.
This character is a magic character, is what we rolled up. Mm-hmm. So I think the idea of having spirits and ghosts, stuff like that, is implied by the character.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely. Oh, that's going to come up.
So I'd like to deal with that a little bit, but I don't want to be, dealing with, Insidious all the time.
Okay. So you didn't sign up to play a Call of Cthulhu game?
I would rather not get into that. Although there are, bad stuff can and will happen, and I'm fine with stuff being scary. It's just that's not the focus of this game, because we're all pretty high-powered characters.
Okay.
I have a long history of All Flesh Must Be Eaten and similar games like that. And I think that when you're dealing with like video store clerk versus zombie, it's a more satisfying horror experience than like Archangel versus Fighter Jet.
Right. Fair enough. Okay. Inclusion of Marvel superheroes. Meaning, from 1 to 10, level 10 is, I'm Charles Xavier's new X-Man, and the whole team is here, hooray! And level 1 would be, well, we saw the Osprey for 5 minutes, and then everybody else was like Ratchet Girl and Santa Man, and who aren't really real characters. But hey, look, Otter Boy, yes, okay. Where do you want to see inclusion of other Marvel characters?
Well, I have a lot of experience with gaming in the Star Wars universe and other licensed properties. The way I see it, when you're running or writing a game that takes place in a licensed environment, I look at it like a new Star Trek show.
Okay.
Like Star Trek, when they would launch a new series, they would have sort of, it was recognizably the same universe. You'd have like Deep Space Nine was obviously taking place in the same era as like Next Gen and Voyager. Mm-hmm. But while it takes place in that context, that environment pulls from similar devices and elements and stuff like that. You don't have the action eclipsed by the canon characters showing up all the time and solving your problems for you.
True.
Like Picard could show up in Deep Space Nine, but almost all the time he did not. The worst case scenario is one in which your own story is eclipsed by the canon, which is like the last episode of Star Trek Enterprise, when it is seen through the remembrance of Riker. And you're like, well, I don't want to see that.
I don't want to
see Riker. I want to see what happens to the characters I care about.
Right.
It's like that entire thing is turned into a footnote.
Right.
And I wasn't a particular fan of Enterprise, but
you made it to the very last episode. Very few people that I know did.
Well, I skipped it.
Oh, okay.
But if you gave a shit about Enterprise, that would be really, really vexing.
Yes, quite.
And so...
Okay,
yeah.
All right. So 1 to 10.
I would say I would put it at a solid 5.
Okay.
I want it to be a world where we acknowledge that all of these other Marvel elements are there. I want it to be the Marvel setting, but I don't want Cyclops to be up in my shit all the time.
Right. Okay, fair enough. Tell me about your character.
All right. Well, this is a character where it's a little bit complicated to explain.
Okay. What's his name?
His name is CSUR-1. That is his alias, because he has CSUR-1 on his outfit.
Okay.
The character's real identity is Antoine Washington, and he is a time traveler who went back in time to the Civil War. And in the Civil War of the Marvel Universe, of course, there would be not necessarily mutants, but other creatures running around and probably would intervene. So he shows up in full armor, says he's a time traveler, works with the North, helps the North win over the demons and vampires and whatever that happen to be on the other side, because owning people is, a pretty big advantage if you happen to be a vampire or something like that.
Now, just a quick side note. Have you read Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter?
Yes.
Okay. I loved the premise. I loved the... So you've kind of taken that I don't know. I don't want to say you've taken that idea if you haven't sued the guy for plagiarism for stealing your idea yet. Because if you were the one that first had that, you should get on him like white on rice. But that is it in the similar vein as that idea?
It's sort of like kind of that, but mostly I wanted to take this back into mostly the Civil War stuff is a footnote in this character's development, because this character he at the end of the Civil War, helping the Union win, he shakes Abraham Lincoln's hand, says, "I'm traveling back to the future." He returns to the future, which is the present, the 21st century. And it turns out that he is an African-American man who has originally come from an environment where the South won, and the world was a fascist, slave-owning nightmare. And that CSUR-1 stands for Confederate States of the Uberreich. 1 being the designation of him as an undesirable citizen.
Nice.
So he has taken it upon himself to changed the entire timeline to try to make things better for himself and his people and everybody in general. And he was a member of the Underground Railroad Resistance in his own timeline.
Okay.
That was like a freedom fighter organization that probably included Magneto, alternate universe version, as the asshole of the organization, but also pretty powerful leader. And Captain America probably is another one. Probably the original Captain America, whose name escapes me right now.
Steve Rogers?
No, before there was
the one before Steve.
The one before him,
Right.
who was black.
And I can't remember his name at the moment either.
I feel bad about that. But,
So do I.
But anyway, so
We'll look that up.
yeah, we will. But I mean, they're back in the other timeline.
Right. So what we did was the South won the war in the original branch of the timeline that you went back and changed. So we took like a handful of the Confederate states and a handful of you got Uberreich in there.
Oh, I decided that they would probably side with the Nazis.
In the World War II. Yes. Okay. Very nice. All right. Which would be pretty much a bad combination for pretty much everybody.
Yeah.
Planet-wide.
Yeah.
If that were to happen. So that I don't like that as an idea. And I like the fact that you went back and changed that. Very, very good. I like building in the idea of the timeline that there would be, like you said, not necessarily mutants, but there's the potential for heavy magic. I like the potential for the vampire take. And I think we're going to utilize a chunk of your background for build-up at some point or another. You may see things that make you go, wait, what? And there are others who might have a time sense along that line as well. So I'm going to steal from your background.
Oh, of course.
And we're going to do that. So go ahead.
I'm a strong believer that you shouldn't put anything on a character sheet that is not a full-on invitation for the GM to throw it into the game.
Okay, good.
I'm a strong believer that there are so many systems where you're like, you take all of the flaws possible to be talk show material, and then you hope to the flying spaghetti monster that the GM's just going to forget about it.
Yeah, they're just going to. I took those flaws he just ignored.
Right.
Yeah.
You take some puff thing. I think it should be very strongly built towards being like your menu, your things that you would potentially like to see.
Well, excellent. Wonderful.
Let's see. So the character returns to the present, and he has basically undone the world where he came from, and ends up in the modern prime Marvel timeline.
Okay.
The character is Magic. He's basically he was from a variety of witch bloodlines that were crossed together to make him as a weapon of magical war, more or less. And he has a variety of abilities, including the ability to manipulate luck and turn off magic power.
Okay. So he comes back to the timeline, and does he get a warm reception? Does he get a hero's welcome? Does there a parade? They have a parade for him?
Well, nobody knows who he is, and it's in his own interest to kind of keep it quiet, or there's a possibility people might try to change things back.
Okay.
One of the things that I said was that all of this is accomplished through magic. The CSUR was sort of like a magocracy with supernatural critters at the top.
Sure, and Hitler had his little occult library and loved it all and helped out with all of that. And
exactly.
That's one of the reasons why he was so big into the whole occult thing. Okay, let's go through. Tell me about your physicals, your FASE. What's your fighting?
My fighting is 75, which is monstrous.
Very good. Your agility?
40. Well, actually, I'm straight 40s down through the rest of the rolls.
Okay,
so incredible.
Okay, so your agility, endurance, and strength, or your agility, strength, and endurance are all 40s?
Right,
okay.
Which is borderline superhuman, but, not super, I'm not going to be, picking up cars and hitting people.
Right.
But
okay.
It's still, Captain America territory.
Oh, absolutely. So tell me about your mentals, your reason, intuition, and psyche.
Reason, 75.
Nice.
Intuition, 50. Psyche, 100.
Excellent. Okay. Obviously built for magic and mental resistance.
Right.
One of the ways that I was going to bone the party from the get-go is the first 4 people that we had that rolled up characters were all, I'm going to punch it in the face, I've got armor, I've got missiles, I can fly, I will smite it with my giant scythe. And I'm like, Doctor Strange is going to roll up and just punk all you people. And then yours kind of took a sideways turn, and it was more magical and it was. What did you think about the selective randomization process for picking your powers?
I really enjoyed it. It was almost uncanny how it came together into a very. Well, it was an unexpected direction that I ended up as a magic character. I was expecting to be sort of a super science
Techie guy?
Yeah, who was like grown in a lab or something and turned on the Nazis. And ended up with a bunch of magic stuff that made the setting that I come from more interesting. Also, the character ended up with mind control, which is pretty powerful in this system, and also pretty evil. Sort of expressly stated that that is a violation of somebody's rights to mind control them.
Absolutely.
I think the book says the sort of moral equivalent of at least breaking and entering. So it very much leads to some
Shades of Grey.
And also just the fact that this character was, he was a liberated slave and he has mind control, that he doesn't want to be like the people he fought against. But that is always, that bullet is loaded into the gun there.
Right. Well, then let me ask you this question. Since we brought the mind control up, we're going to go through your power list as well here. You don't want to be like your oppressors that were in the realm before you. What are your thoughts on mind control specifically from the standpoint of, well, these people oppressed you and forced their will upon you. Now, if you had mind control, is it no problem for you to force someone else to your will slavishly?
Right. It's a really rough. It's a rough choice, and I suppose what will come down to it is I'll be confronted with a situation in which I can either take the high road and lose out on something, or take the quick, easy path and mind control somebody.
You will be presented with that dark side challenge. You most definitely will. Okay, so let's go down your power list. What do you do? What do you got?
All right. Well, let's see. I've got detect magic, so I have a sixth sense detects magic around me
at power rank
30.
Okay.
So that's in this system, I think that's about a 50-50 chance per round to detect anybody with some kind of magic-based superpower.
Okay.
I have levitation at a 30, which is, I'm not going to be zipping up. Levitation is vertical only, so I'm not going to be, flying at a very fast rate of speed directly up anyway.
Right. Elevator shaft. Oh, sure.
Right, that kind of thing. So, that is mostly just something that showed up on the power list. I think it's thematic, because, the guy who's like the caster, usually is floating. You've got Doctor Strange or whomever.
Yes. The cape behind you. Does your character have a cape?
He has a poncho.
Very nice. Okay. Because, Edna Mode from The Incredibles, no capes.
Oh, yeah.
So, anyway, we had a discussion with another character about his cape, and, he said, well, if I get sucked through a jet engine, it's going to be the jet engine that has the problem. And I said, okay, never mind. So, moving on. All right.
Okay, body armor 75, which I figured would be, magical warding, like mystic tattoos.
Okay. But yet when things come in, it flares and it's got a real body armor take to it. Okay, fair enough. Nice.
Magic control of the category negate at 75.
Ouch. So that's like the off switch.
Oh, yeah. So it doesn't work on like super science or mutations or whatnot. But if it's magic, I can just turn it off.
Ow, okay.
Let's see. Mind control. At 50.
At 50?
Because because that runs off my psyche to activate it. 50 is what they're working against to break out of it.
Okay.
Probability manipulation at 75. Now, originally on this character, we rolled up reality alteration, which kind of explained the time travel that he just sort of wrote himself into history and changed everything retroactively, Lathe of Heaven style.
Right. It's a little dangerous to do
which, was interesting and all, but it just seems so expansive that in the role-playing game context, I was happy to change it to just luck alteration.
Okay. Because you don't want to just go, well, we have a problem. I will rewrite that.
Yeah, you're
game breaking.
You're basically Bill and Ted with their trash can.
Nice.
With that power, and it would be really cool in a sort of City of Lost Children kind of way to see the stuff align to give you the result you wanted, but not terribly interesting in the context of gaming.
Okay.
Where it's like, oh, John's talking again about how Spiderweb has a drop of water on it that goes off and does something. That wouldn't be fun to play.
Okay.
So luck manipulation is basically what I've got, plus or minus. I can give somebody good luck or I can give somebody bad luck. And the last one is animal mimicry, which is like Animal Man. So I don't actually turn into animals or whatever, but I can gain powers from different creatures. And I figured that would be like calling out to the spirits.
Okay.
Like get like a bear spirit or something, and channel its power to have claws or whatever.
Or bite,
but
or...
your body never actually changes with this power as it's.
Okay. Excellent.
Let's see the.
Talents and contacts.
Talents and contacts. Let's see. Talents, I'm a bibliophile.
Okay.
We rolled that randomly, which is perfect because I mean, the character is supernatural occultist in nature, so he can...
Now, what does bibliophile let you do?
That one, I believe it was a bonus to research, if I recall correctly.
Finding books, especially of an occultish nature.
Right. And the next two came up... in just a random roll together, history. So I picked U.S. Civil War because he was there. And resist domination,
Always
which
good.
I figured was I figured reflects his personal background of extreme deprivation and all kinds of hardship.
Oh, sure.
That he was put through. I mean, being basically bioengineered by vampire Nazi hillbillies, probably not much fun.
Right. Well, and that might have been one of the keys that helped when he was in a scenario where he had access to equipment that would send him back in time.
Right.
Then he could, okay, well, you're going to go in and do this, you're going to do that, and he's like, no, you mean I have a shot? Okay, set it for when this whole thing started. Bling, throw the lever. Wait, no, stop, quit, don't do that. And the resist domination is like, no, I've got to go now, thanks, bye-bye.
So contacts. I was going to say that there would be, occultists and magi, who would be, those sort of like Doctor Strange crew.
Right.
And give me access to the occult books that I kind of need to use bibliophile.
Right.
I said ghosts of dead people from the Civil War, because that seemed like an interesting contact that would also bring the background into the present.
Absolutely, because you can visit the places where the wars took place,
right,
or where the particular battles took place, and then go, oh, look, yeah, they're still there.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
And let's see, the Underground Railroad Freedom Fighters were one that was a bonus from something we rolled up in the course of my background. So they are, if they show up, which is not going to be all the time, I'm guessing. But if somebody shows up from the other timeline, then I do have a contact, contacts there.
Well, and we do have other time travel characters.
That's true.
That will make things more or less complicated, depending.
Quite true. Rico's character is going to be, I think, perhaps a little bit annoyed by some of the things that have happened. But basically, I'm going to say that my character is sort of out of the time travel business for the time being.
Okay.
And finally, I was going to say that there were spirits, the Orisha or something like that would be in contact with them. One of the characters that I wrote into my my background as an NPC was Adam, the father of man, who is basically this sort of older black man who, is sort of CSUR-1's conscience, who is relatable to him, has kind of served as the guy who steers him away from expedient choices.
Okay.
Whether he likes it or not.
Okay.
The character is by no means morally perfect, but his problem is pride. I mean, he took it upon himself to rewrite history. That's not exactly something you take a vote on.
Yeah.
So,
especially when you're the lone gunman, as it were, and
right.
You make the change. You're a committee of one.
Right. So
if you had to throw an alignment on your character out of the box, from the whole standpoint of, I went back in time, I changed it for the better, figure quoties. You made some definite changes. They look better in the Prime universe than I would think. What would you put as an alignment on your character?
In the classical 9 D&D alignments, I would say pretty far along the line towards chaotic good. Not like, I'm just sort of I'm a good guy, but I'm sort of a dick to the quest giver. But no, I mean like full on, like so committed to the ideals of freedom and anti-authoritarian thought that it is a defining characteristic.
Okay, cut the rope. We don't care what happens as
Right.
long as it's better than this.
Right.
And go from there.
Well, I mean, and admittedly, he comes from a pretty horrible, environment. One of the things that this reflects my own personal politics, in that I find it really annoying when people start to say, "Oh, well, actually, the South was, fighting for states' rights and blah blah blah." It's like, well, you know what? I've never heard a black guy say that.
Right. It's states' rights are great. You owned people as property. Let's talk about states' rights after we say, how about no slavery? Well, that was it was all kind of together. Oh, okay. So what you're doing is you're bullshitting me, and don't bullshit a bullshit. Okay.
I see a lot of sort of revisionism. Also, that's something I see in a lot of role-playing games, where it's like, well, we're going to do this sort of 19th century thing, except we're going to say that all the racism went away somehow. Yeah. It does leave sort of a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah, it was interesting. I'm also playing in a Call of Cthulhu game that was 1924, 1925. The first minute that I went, well, yes, he's a darky, and people were at the table were like, whoa, and I'm like, what? That's.
Well, I mean,
thanks for playing.
The characters, the characters sometimes are products of, this is sort of. This isn't something that I was going to make the focus of the whole game, but I think that, there is a certain element of addressing racism as a ongoing problem in society that is an element implied in this character.
But John, we have a black president. Racism is no more, right?
Oh, all of our friends on Facebook.
People are going to get upset. Huh?
Oh yeah. If you think that I'm terrible for addressing this, please leave a comment, and I'll be sure.
Thousands of
I'll
comments.
be sure to get.
Great.
I'll be sure to give a damn about all of them.
You give each one at least 1,001. I gave it a damn. Move along. 1,001. Okay, next one. Okay. All right. Fair enough. So yeah, I recognize that there are some people we have in common, especially on the Facebooks, who maybe don't get it to that degree. But
I try to maintain I maintain friendships with people who don't necessarily have the same political views as I do. And
how open-minded of you.
It's important to get past that. I think that we are very polarized, especially on social media.
Oh yeah.
Now, granted, there are a few of my friends that I've just sort of hidden them from my newsfeed, but it happens.
Yeah, sometimes that happens. I can't advocate that or speak out against it, but yeah.
And probably I'm going to get some flack for being a white guy making up a black character, but You know,
You know
never
that know. In the entire character concept process, we've been working at this for about a month now. That thought had not occurred to me. There it is. Alrighty then. Which brings us full circle. Good callback to take it upon yourself to right the injustices, to speak out about the Okay, so you've taken it upon yourself to change the timeline. Okay, you went back and said, I am going to make this change. There's a little narcissism there, maybe a seed. I have a bunch of it, so I can kind of recognize, trust me. So you've come back to the current timeline, Earth Prime, as it were.
Oh, yes.
Are you hanging up the coat? Like that mantle that you put, I'm going to make this change because this is what we're going to go with what I think is right. And, with great power comes great responsibility, blah, blah. We know Peter Parker's take. But now, are you going to hang that mantle up?
Well, I would say that, first of all, it's, the first thing that he would say upon returning and learning about intervening new history was, well, damn it, Abraham Lincoln was fine when I left.
Right.
And, one of the things that I think was going to be a common thread to what happens with this character is remarking on the similarities between the Prime timeline. And it's like, oh, hey, Fox News, yeah, we had that too. Yeah. That kind of thing.
Right, right.
So
that's great. To give your own little running commentary. Mm-hmm. Oh, really? So we still have that, huh? Oh, great.
But
okay,
I
didn't get rid of everything. I didn't get rid of everything. Wonderful.
Right. But in a more serious note, I mean, the character is probably a little bit disappointed that it didn't usher in a new era of perfect equality.
That it wasn't more utopian or more equal, more perfect in
right.
your world vision.
I mean, getting rid of the vampire hillbilly Nazis is great and all, but,
that's a big step up.
Right. So that's kind of the issue.
So then, given that, and as we roll forward with it, that's a big step up, but obviously not the 2 or 3 more steps that we need more towards that pure equality of
right.
social standing. Well, you took it upon yourself once. Would you go back and make those 2 or 3 more steps?
Well, that's a temptation, but at the same time, there's possibility that what if it gets worse? What if it has other ripples? And
I mean, first and foremost, you come back, you start reviewing the history, you start learning about, okay, going over, here's what happened. I would imagine that there would be an almost knee-jerk reaction to want to immediately travel back and tackle John Wilkes Booth in the Ford Theater and go, wait a minute, Lincoln was fine, and then whoa, really? Wait, hold on. Whoop. Get that guy!
Well, in the context of the character, since I was going to say that the time travel process is going to be difficult. I wrote in that it was a magical rift of some kind in the Angel Mound site where the game is set in Indianapolis. I was going to say that Angel Mound site is a place in Evansville where there are burial mounds from the Mississippian culture.
Right.
And that it was very difficult to negotiate with the spirits to go back through time and place. So as to make that a not all the time thing.
Right.
Plot possible, but not plot convenient.
Right.
And also,
because I have a surprise twist on that take. But...
Oh yeah. Well, you never know who's going to walk out of that portal.
Well, and just because you beat the vampire hillbilly Nazis in the first timeline doesn't necessarily mean that somebody else hasn't built a scientific research center on top of those mounds and are attempting to harness that particular whatever it was found before for their own wholesome, good-natured uses.
Oh yeah, no NPCs are gonna be harmed in the making of this plot.
Well, perhaps.
Well, but in any case, one of the things to avoid getting too thematic with it, I was going to say that this character is going to have to come to terms with the fact that there are going to be things he's going to have to do in the present too. And thematically, I was going to say that probably it will involve fighting, those occasional hillbilly Nazi vampires that happen to just survive the fall of their attempt and stuff like that.
Oh, because there's going to be some of those still left around. I mean, if they're vampires, they live forever,
Right,
theoretically.
right.
And there might be one or two of those that
Would show up.
You popped out, and if word should get around that all of a sudden
They'd be like,
you're back,
that dude.
that guy right
Yeah.
there.
So, and also that lets us have a few levels of symbolism.
Oh yeah.
That there are, a few problems that can be punched.
Yeah. Very good.
Just to, maybe not have it not be entirely on the nose.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and as a personal note, just to our listeners at home, I have always had an issue with the present-day individuals who fly the Confederate flag. Like, yeah, we're Southern. Woo!
Well,
that's the flag of a traitor. I don't mean to be this way, but you raised arms against your government. That was your flag.
especially if you're from Indiana.
Well, yeah.
And also, I mean, there are people who say, "Oh, well, it's heritage and whatever." But I mean, you know what? If you're a neo-Nazi in Germany, you're not allowed to have a swastika.
Call it heritage.
They fly that, and do you know what it means?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
means swastika. I wonder why.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the same sort of like, well, that's heritage. Well, no, that's the flag of a traitor. Like, easy.
Yeah,
there,
I've
buddy.
never seen a black dude with it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, my people were on a plantation. Whoa, you never hear that. Mm-hmm. And it was funny that you mentioned that. My parents, about a decade ago, went on a cruise trip down the Rhine. And on day 3 or 4, they stopped at this little side village and all went and had dinner. And my father, who is particularly crass, in his own lovable way, and his buddy were sitting at the table, and they had brought out like the water glasses, and the one that my father's friend got was kind of dirty, and it wasn't 4-star by any. It was the kind where they bring out the fish and the head is still on it. That's sort of like, and you're like, ugh, why would you do that? But they were talking to the waitress lady who spoke lots of German and very, very little English. Mm-hmm. And they were like, hey, can I get a new water glass? And she's like, what? I don't know. You have water right there. And they were like, no, his water glass is dirty. Can he get another glass? This glass doesn't look like... And he's trying to... My father's friend is trying to convey this, and they're having a problem. Mm-hmm. And finally, my father picks up the glass and looks at the lady and says, and I quote...
Uh-oh.
He thinks this is the glass Hitler drank out of.
Oh, jeez.
This lady lost it. No Hitler! No Hitler! And just, like, the whole establishment came to a halt. They took away the glass, the thing, they brought wine, it was just like, no Hitler, don't bring that up. We don't want to talk about it. And it was hysterical to see. So this was, late 90s, early 2000s, just turn of the century. Uh-huh. And they're still, 50 years later, like, don't bring that up. We don't want to talk about that.
The Germans have a word, Kulturscham, which is culture shame. Something you can be ashamed of as an entire culture, which I don't think Americans have. I mean, we have sort of a matter-of-fact arrogance even about the atrocities we've committed.
Oh, yeah.
And as such...
That's that ugly American thing.
Right.
I mean, we're just like, whatever, we're Americans, it doesn't matter. That's kind of appalling, actually, now that I think about it. But yeah, we don't have that. Mm. And maybe we need that. That's not necessarily a bad thing.
Oh, unfortunately, the way that you get it is... honestly, I'm not sure how we would get it at this point. Really, there's... I'm having a difficult time thinking of something that we we haven't already done.
But that, it takes a village to raise a child. When this thing happens, like, we should all be like, ooh, hey. We don't possess that as a group. I mean, we really don't embrace the idea of, oh, wow, you said what? God, knock that off. Don't do that. Mm.
Right. So, anyway, back on topic.
So, you came in with an idea. Like, you had the idea of CSUR-1, let's go back, let's change the past to begin with. And then you got a character that we did selective randomization on. Mm-hmm. Did it end up the way you wanted it to? Did it end up the way you thought it would?
I was expecting sort of a science character. Mm-hmm. With maybe some high-tech stuff or, some... I sort of made the character ambiguous. He could have ended up in a number of different ways. Like he could have even been spliced with alien DNA or something like that.
Okay.
But I really like the idea of him being a magic character, and I do realize that there is a little bit of crossover with like Blade. Sort of has a similar element, but whatever. I'm going to steal from the best.
Right.
I'll say he was in my freedom fighter group too.
Okay. Absolutely.
I mean,
so do you like the way it turned out?
Oh yeah, I'm very happy with it. It stayed true to the theme and came out with some new knobs and dials I didn't expect.
Okay.
And I'm very happy with that.
How was the process of selective randomization? In other words, what we did for the listener was we gave you 2 rolls, you rolled up 2 powers, you got to pick one of them. Or you could take both of them for both slots at the idea of you don't get to roll the next slot. You got slot 1 and slot 2. Well, we're going to roll for slot 1. You can take either of these, or you can take that as 1 and 2 without looking to see what your alternative would have been for the second slot. What'd you think about the process?
Well, I thought the process was really neat. There were a few things where I did actually, let's see, I have my notes here still. There were a few things where it was a really hard choice. I could have ended up with like kinetic bolts and throwing zaps around there, or let's see, what else did I could have had spider climb, and that didn't fit at all. So right. I was grateful that I could just drop a few things.
Because I think pure random, when you take all the powers that are available and you just go, we're going to mix and match, you sometimes end up with a very things don't match. I mean, things like you're right, like your concept in spider climb, like really, that's like water breathing. Yes. Really? I went back to fight the Civil War and needed water breathing. Why? I was on the Merrimack. Like now you're stretching. You're really reaching here.
Well, they conquered Atlantis.
Yeah, exactly.
Or something. Anyway, I know that in general, a high degree of randomization is unfashionable in character creation these days. Mm-hmm. So this felt very old school.
Oh, good.
I enjoyed that. I mean, I've done Traveler, which is the game notorious where you can die in care gen. You're rolling up your nice. Background depending on the edition you're playing. So I mean, this was really cool. I thought that it came together pretty well. We basically were allowed to reallocate our phase rip line in, rather than just going down the list. But I actually lucked out and kept it pretty close to how it was originally.
Cool. Excellent. Anything you would have changed or added? Because we had one character that came in and he wanted to play something like the Thing or the Hulk, pure defense, and he took a sideways turn. This was Rico's character, and because he wanted to be the Guardian, he wanted to be pure defensive, and he would be the meat shield, or to play something like the Thing. And came to realize through his character generation that it would have been very two-dimensional. And it wouldn't have given him the story or the motivation to, I can take punches and I can give punches. Well, at some point, that's boring.
Right.
When you look at a fight between Superman and Doomsday, we're going to punch each other until one of us stops. Or the Hulk and Annihilation or Abomination. Like, really? That's all we got? Okay, you punched him through a building, you punched him through a mountain, you punched him through the center of the earth. You're just going to find more stuff to punch him through? Like, at what point does this become boring?
Well, and that's like my critique of one of my critiques of like scenarios like where on a certain level it becomes how can I express this without causing nerd rage? Well, like on a certain level there's this sort of fundamental good versus evil and they clash, and that's symbolized in a character. On another level you get like Superman versus Doomsday,
right?
Where you're like, what? They're just going to punch each other to death, and that's it.
Yeah.
You start to like want to see,
more.
You want to see well, at the very least, you can address it as like a moral sacrifice, like some kind of. Or maybe some kind of creative use of what you've got.
Right. Right. Because my thought was, okay, he's going to stand there and punch it out with Doomsday. Why doesn't he just pick him up and throw him into the sun?
Right. Like Doomsday cannot fly or stuff like that. Why does that not come into play?
Right.
And so yeah, so that's the kind that comes back to the entirety of our point of playing a role-playing game, where it is not going to be limited by the format of a comic, or the limitations of page count, or whatever the writer can come up with. We're going to have us arbitrating our decisions, and that's kind of what I really dig about superhero stuff. What would I do differently or like on this character? I'd like a better travel power. I think would probably be useful. I mean, I guess I could use animal mimicry to fly like a bird with through the sky, but yeah, at the same time, it sort of grounds the character a little bit. That his, I've played a lot of superhero games where if a character can fly and go anywhere in an instant, then you start to, it starts to get hand wavy.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of what we want to avoid. And we have a pretty crunchy system. By today's standard anyway.
So I want you to define two terms that we just used. Hand wavy.
Hand wavy.
For the listening. For
hand
listeners.
wavy. Okay. Hand wavy is arbitrary. Defined by the people playing on an ad hoc basis, in which there's the actual process of determination doesn't really matter. You just decide on something and run with it. Okay. You're like, oh, well, I guess I could be over there. It's like, yeah, you're fine. You're over there.
Yeah, sure.
As opposed to like counting your bullets, counting your steps,
right.
That kind of thing.
Like you could be over there, but that's gonna need to make a point. So how are you going to get there?
Yeah.
You have 30 seconds.
Can my fireball hit all the orcs? Yeah, I guess so.
Sure. Yeah. So what's a crunchy system?
A crunchy system. Would be defined as something with a lot of moving parts, where I would call that a system with charts and roles and hard mechanics to determine the outcome of situations. So
as opposed to something like Fate.
As opposed to something like Fate, where you bring in something narrative, or the results are agreed on arbitrarily, or arbitrarily, but negotiated.
Right.
By
more so than this.
Right. Whatever seems to be thematically appropriate. And now, not every narrative system is not crunchy. They're like Burning Wheel would be an example of one that is very very story based, but also very, very elaborate in the rules.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything on your character sheets you have questions about, or that you need explanation, or that you want to clarify before we move forward?
The resources role.
What's your resources?
I assigned a 30, but I don't think that that's really how it works. I saw in the book that there was a 10 that was a base, and then you roll to modify or something like that.
There? Resources. Resources may be increased through spending karma under specific circumstances. Resources start at typical. If no information is available, consider them typical. Oh, okay. Well, what I like to do is make that one of the regular roles.
Okay.
And we start it off, and that can then be tailored to your background, etc. So we can say that there were monies that were
deposited or invested in the Civil War era, and I'm collecting them now.
Absolutely. That were put in trust, or were held, or you Western Unioned them to yourself, or
buried treasure, or
exactly
whatever. Yeah,
okay. I have no real problem with that. I never really liked the idea of resources start at typical when you've got Tony Starks and Bruce Waynes and Lex Luthors, and you're going like, really? So, but I have a checking account, that gets overdraft fees on it regularly because I live paycheck to paycheck. Wait,
right, and really, money is just like a cosmetic feature almost.
Well, especially in a superhero game.
In a superhero game.
Unless you're getting into the idea of Josh's character, where I want to fund my own scientific research into nanobots. Well, then you need some resources. And he has a ton of it.
Right.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
There you go. Anything else you got questions about?
Let's see here. I was a little unclear on the karma system. So I've got karma at 225. Is that like my... is that something that can... I understand it goes up and down. I spend it for some things?
Yes. Yes. Here we go. Let me...
This is also the first time I've actually played this system. I've read the book, but there's a lot of numbers, and I'm old and spoiled by all of these games that have...
Do it all for you?
Well, or have... that focus on elegance over complexity.
Right. Okay. One of the things you can do within, and I don't know that the rest of the players know this, so either they're going to need to listen to your character, Jen, or I'm going to need to go over it. Using karma, one of the things you can do is use it in combat. Mm-hmm. Karma is delved into deeply in the next chapter, but since it has an important effect on combat, it should be mentioned here. Karma is used to manipulate die rolls on the universal table. When a character decides to spend karma, the player simply announces it. You automatically spend 10 karma points by saying that sentence. So if by saying that simple phrase, I want to spend karma, 10 points gone already. Just to spend it.
Okay.
You can spend more, but 10 points is the requirement for making the statement. On the die roll you are modifying, always the one immediately after the announcement. So if you're like, I'm going to spend karma in 3 rounds to kill this guy, well, you're going to spend it on the next roll. So thanks for playing. Wait for it. On the die roll immediately after the announcement, you add the karma you spend at least 10, the amount you spent to start with. The other uses of karma are described in the karma section. So in other words, you say, I'm spending karma, you've spent 10. If you roll a natural 100, and
it's still there.
You've still spent 10.
Well,
if you roll a 10 and you want to get a 100, you need to spend 90 karma, so 80 more than the original 10 that you spent. Okay, so that's one helpful addition from that karma can be used for. So that's why building karma is good. When you perform certain tasks, you'll get karma awards and bonuses and things like that.
Right.
If you kill, you lose all your karma.
Right, unless it's like a robot or a...
Right, unless it's an artificial being, undead, robot. If you kill anything living, oops there, you've spattered pig's blood all over your tunic, okay? As a hero adventures in the Marvel Universe, he gains and loses karma. Karma is the reward system of the game and is a register of how well the character is doing compared to an ideal hero. Karma is also spendable experience points. In other words, it's gained by the player. It may be spent by the player to make certain actions happen, whether it's supposed to happen. Example, Captain America, with only one chance, bounces his shield off 3 walls and hits the lever necessary to prevent the detonation of the Z-bomb. He spent karma.
Right.
He makes that impossible throw, and you're like, that dude had to be spending karma. Karma is also spent to complete technological items, accomplish power stunts, and to advance the characters in ability and power.
Ah, okay. So this is a game from that era when your points to massage the system are also spent as P.
Correct.
Ah, okay. I remember. Yeah, they did this in Torg, and that's an interesting thing because I've seen different gamers use that resource very differently. Because sometimes they just hoard it and live with whatever rolls they get. Sometimes I've seen players like throw everything they have at like every like random guy with a baseball bat, and and so that's an interesting thing. I know that there are games that came later on that sort of as a reaction to that split the experience from the point massage. Like, let's see, I'm trying to remember one right now. Let's see, I know 7th C, they had drama dice turned directly into X.
Right.
But I mean, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Or like action points in Star Wars or some variations of Third Ed, where you basically or Mutants and Masterminds, a very much a distinguished competitor of this game, a game I'm very much a fan of, by the way. They basically said, like, okay, you spend your action points or hero points, and if they come back at the beginning of the next game, but if you don't spend them, then you don't bank them.
Right. With karma, you can bank it. And the idea of karma Okay, spending karma. How did we get into feats?
Oh, well, feats were something that I was really excited about this game.
Oh, yeah.
Where you sort of massage how your powers, where it's like, well, why doesn't Spider-Man use his webs for some obscure thing that you saw him do one time?
Right. Why doesn't he do that all the time?
Because his player doesn't have enough points for it.
Now, you may also form what is called a karma pool. Okay? Karma pool means everybody decides, whoever you're making the pool with, chunks in a bit of their karma, and anyone in the group can spend it.
Oh.
So the idea of, all right, well, we're on this intergalactic scale, and the one thing has to happen. Well, let's all get together, and we're going to send him off to do whatever. He needs as much karma as he can get.
Oh, okay, so we're going to have... This is going to turn into an interesting exchange between our diehard libertarian and our wailing liberal.
Yeah. Yes, it will. Optional rule, locking karma pools. As stated above, heroes may set their own bylaws regarding the spending of karma. In other words, you can set up rules that if you can't spend karma to kill someone. You can't spend karma to whatever if she's wearing a purple dress. No, we don't. I don't like this. I had a girlfriend that jilted me that she wore purple dresses all the time. You will not help anyone wearing a purple dress.
Got it. Yeah.
One such law may be the locking of a karma pool. A lock should be agreed on by all members of the group. Karma placed into the locking karma pool may not be withdrawn by the members. It may only be used by the individuals to modify die rolls. Such a locking karma pool may only be dissolved by a unanimous vote of those who belong. So you can set strict stringence, and you can say, because theoretically, if you put together a karma pool, you could use it for personal advancement.
Oh, well, that's cheesy.
It is cheesy, isn't it? Karma may be spent from its reserve for a number of purposes: manipulating die rolls, changing results, advancement, building things, and power stunts. Karma spent in any of these fashions is lost and may not be recovered. A player may not spend more karma than his character normally has, which is one reg to, if you have 100 karma and you're in a karma pool that has 10,000 karma in it, you can still only spend 100. Because you only have 100.
Right.
So the idea of you do want to bank a bit, and not have, well, I sit at 6 all the time. Well, you can't even say the sentence at that point. So, spending manipulation to do the power stunt, modifying results, advancement. Characters may put karma aside for advancement. This karma is put into a separate fund and is considered untouchable by the player for normal use, and similarly unaffected by negative karma modifiers. Oh. Any karma put aside is placed there for a specific purpose and may only be spent for that purpose. Karma is placed in advancement funds, usually at the end of an adventure or gaming session, but never in the middle of combat or during an adventure. In other words, quiet time as opposed to the heat of the chase. Advancement is described in full in the next section. A character developed in Marvel Superheroes role-playing game, they may increase their levels, powers, and abilities. This is known as advancement. In order to advance, individual players must create a separate listing or fund of karma. Karma placed in that column will be used for a specific type of advancement: ability, resource, popularity, power, power addition, talent addition, or contact addition. So remember when I said you had 7 of 9 talents to begin with, or I can't remember your exact number.
Right.
I can look it up.
Yeah, it's here. Let me see here. I've got it on my. Let's see. I had 8 of 10 powers.
You had 8 of 10 powers. That means you have slots for 2 more.
Okay.
And you can buy those with karma advancement.
I see. Okay. Although counting it out, I think I ended up with 9 powers. Well, 9 levels of powers.
Correct. Power advancement is the increase in superhuman abilities the character already possesses and reflects a fine honing of these abilities.
Okay. Oh, just for the record, and going forward, one of my features as a gamer is that I have a history of terrible dice rolls.
Yes.
I am the bottom end of the luck bell curve, unfortunately, for that. I mean, Marty and Josh rolled much higher stats than...
Yes, they did.
So that's just one of those things.
Now, does that make you happy that you have probability manipulation?
Oh, yeah.
You're like, yes.
Yeah, because I
am
going to have to work that like a mofo in order to, not die parallel parking, probably. So...
Excellent.
That is a very useful thing for me.
Yay. All right, any other questions?
No, I think... actually, there is one.
Yes.
I wasn't sure how to set my identity. I was going to make it public, just moving forward. I mean,
Antoine Washington is known by folks, or CSUR-1 is known by folks.
I was going to say Caesar. Well, I mean, really, he doesn't really have a social number or whatever. So, because I'm not really.
Well, you're going to get tagged. You're going to have to get tagged with one of those when Shield gets a hold of you.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. So that's one of those things. I mean.
We will get to be able to role play a day at like the DMV, social services, the Social Security Administration. God, man, that is the height of role playing.
Yeah, delightful. So, that's probably where that mind control temptation is going to come in.
Exactly.
But yeah. So basically, the character, I wasn't sure if that would count as a public or a secret identity for his for purposes of this game. Yeah, for his popularity.
Either or, not sure yet. We might see how it unrolls in a little bit of roleplay there in the opening. What are your thoughts on like a team? What if someone in the group, Marty, wants to put together a team?
Well, I'd like to say for the record that while I enjoy the X-Men as a comic and a property, nobody, not even the X-Men, really want to be on the X-Men.
Finally, thank you.
They just sort of have to be because they're all dirty mutants, and
right.
No one else will have them. So there you go. That's where all of that tension comes from, because they have to ally with each other, come together in order to pull through, because they're in the Marvel X-Men universe is very anti-super.
Right.
So, yeah, no, I don't want to be in his version of the X-Men. That's dumb.
Right. Well, that's why I love that scene in the Statue of Liberty when they're not sure whether Wolverine is prove that you're really Wolverine. You're a dick. Oh, okay, let's go.
So, I mean, like, I just don't think we have that thematically. I also think that the X-Men are a lot better when they're in X-Men universe as opposed to Marvel universe.
Correct.
I think that it is very much an asset for everybody involved that is a Sony property rather than Disney. Yeah. Just because it means that they get to have their own theme that they actually do.
Right.
So
okay, because there has been discussion from certain avenues that we're going to form it, and I'm like, I'm not seeing it here. I'm not seeing it here. I'm not seeing it here. There are several different seats at the table who are like, really? And some of the discussion has fallen down to some of the players want to be darker, and some of them want to be the bastions of light. And when play styles roll along those lines, it's gonna divide the table, and it'd be like, oh, you want us to be a team?
Oh boy!
But now I have to snap your neck like a chicken bone because you're a horrible person. And it's like, well, let's see how this works.
Well, I'm not really sure how it is going to work out. I imagine this character, in spite of his sort of high-handed, view of history, to be very much on the individual freedom versus justice side of things. That entire dichotomy. I wanted him to be a good guy, and maybe call people on their bullshit now and then, but not necessarily like go around snapping necks and
right. Are you a hero, a vigilante, or an anti-hero?
I would say that this character is a hero who is a little on the reckless side.
Okay, excellent. All right. Any other questions? Anything else you need filled in?
No. I'm pretty happy with this character. I recognize that this is sort of a mix of Blade and Black Panther and a whole bunch of other elements that I think are coming together pretty well. But
I agree. Excellent. Well, good. Well, that'll do us tonight for Gaming with Scott. Please visit the website. Please download the rest of our podcasts, and we'll talk to you real soon.
Have a good one.
Good night. Say good night, John.
Good night, John.
There we go.
That's it tonight for us on the Gaming with Scott podcast. You can always send us an email at gamingwscott@gmail.com or catch us on Twitter. Josh Elliott is at Asmodee369. John is at JPMGarlic. Josh Jackson is at ActionJack853. Rico is at R1C0. Or me, Scott T, at GamingWScott. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/GamingWScott. Don't forget to check out nerdsdom.com for all their reviews and other great podcasts. Remember, be the superhero you always wanted to see in the world. As always, you'll be hearing from us real soon.